Good morning, I'm Dilip Thakore, editor of EducationWorld.
Good morning, I'm Summiya Yasmeen, managing editor.
In the February issue of EducationWorld, we have some very interesting stories to present to you. One is 12 uninterrupted rackets destroying Indian education. And then
Special report, education emergency, declared 2021-22 as zero academic year.
Then we have some interesting columns by Professor Geeta Kingdon and Dr. Krishna Kumar, who are eminent educationists and writers.
Okay, let's take our readers through what we've got in this issue. So in our editorial section, as usual, we've got two edits on burning national topics. One is titled Positive Discrimination is Not Appeasement.
Yeah, in this we talk about, the burning issue of in the UP election of the split between the India's major communities, Hindus and Muslims.
Yes, and why it's dangerous for the nation, and also highlight a lot of hate speeches that are going against the minority community, and why this is not good for India's unity and diversity.
Yeah, we believe that the Constitution provides for a lot of positive discrimination in favor of minorities, and that should be respected.
Yes, and in our second editorial, we posit the question: does the prolonged closure of education institutions, especially primary schools, for over 700 days, which is the world's longest education lockdown, during which children have suffered huge learning loss, not just learning loss, also mental stress. We propose that it's perhaps beneficial
22
to be declared as a zero academic year, so children can recover and be brought up to speed on what they have lost in this year of school closures.
In fact, this is a very important issue because we've done a major story in the very same issue on that.
And in our education news, again, very topical issues covered. In Delhi, we've asked about the Delhi University reintroducing the 4-year undergraduate program, and we give a little history of how in 2013, then Vice Chancellor Dinesh Singh had introduced this, and how it was vetoed. UGC, the new government, BJP government which came in, and it had to be withdrawn, and how now it has been reintroduced because the National Education Policy highly recommends the 4-year undergraduate program. And there's stories on Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, we are talking about how there's a tussle between the governor and the MBA government over the amendment of the Maharashtra Universities Amendment Act. And in Karnataka,
of course, the
headscarves row, a burning topic where girl children of the Muslim minority community are being stopped from entering education institutions because they're wearing the hijab. The matter is now in the consideration of the Karnataka High Court, which we hope is going to give a ruling very soon. And then in West Bengal, we're talking about the curious reluctance of the TMC government led by Mamata Banerjee to reopen primary schools, even though the COVID positivity rate in the state has come down substantially. The state government is still refusing to reopen primary schools.
And in Tamil Nadu, there's a demand for the cancellation of the peculiar Class 11 board exam that they have in light of the pandemic.
Yes, Tamil Nadu is one of the few states, perhaps the only state in the country, which has a board exam for Class 11 students. So in light of the pandemic, teachers, schools, students are all demanding that this be cancelled for this year. And
apart from our education notes and education briefs, then there's Professor Krishna Kumar, who presents some ideas about shaping a new roadmap after the pandemic to restore Indian education back on the tracks.
Yes. He very rightly says that first to assess the diverse impacts of the pandemic on education and school children, the first step should be to constitute a focus group to examine what has happened and to suggest a roadmap.
Yes.
And we have two very interesting institution profiles, one on the Millennium National School, Pune, which perhaps uniquely is India's only schools bags free school. A very interesting profile on this institution. We recommend you read it. Foreign universities on Coventry University, United Kingdom. And young achievers, two very bright, talented young achievers profiled. Divya Sajwali, who's a social activist, and a very young author, Kuvam Gupta, phenomenal achievements at a very young age, Dilip. And in our special essay,
we have Professor Geeta Kingdon, who is the professor at the Institute of Education, the University College London, writing on the union budget.
And in our cover story this time, like Dilip mentioned earlier, we've done a very important story, which is an expose story, 12 uninterrupted rackets destroying Indian education.
Well, we had first done this story in the year 2004, and we find that the very same rackets are flourishing, uninterrupted.
And more have been added to the list.
Yeah, and it's quite shocking how the fault is not only of government, which tolerates this, but it's also of industry and academics and others who are have a vested interest in making sure that education is clean and free and of high quality, because industry needs the people who come out of the education system. Yet, amazingly, they all stood idly by, all of us. The middle classes stood idly by, while a lot of rackets flourish in the government system, which educates 52% of the children in school today.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like as we said in the story, the license permit quota Raj we used to flourish in Indian industry has moved into education. As we write in the story, to start a school, you need numerous government permissions, and for each government permissions, there are commissions and cutbacks that are asked for. We've listed 12 rackets. I mean, by no means these are the only rackets that are happening in education. There's the RT quota scam, there's the RT reimbursement scam, teacher recruitment, teacher transfers, textbook printing. We've also got kickbacks in constructions of school buildings, government school buildings.
Well, the moral of the story, all this needs to be cleaned up. And this is not only going to happen, this is not going to happen without public pressure, which means teachers, educationists, the public, all of us have to get involved with this.
Absolutely. We highly recommend you read it and send feedback, debate, discuss, and let's build a coalition against corruption in education. We need to eradicate it.
Indeed.
And in our people section, again, a very enterprising 5 people we've profiled. One is Mr. Kuneru Satyanarayan, who's the founder of the KL D University in Vijayawada, a phenomenal university with over...
Very low profile, we never heard of it, but it's obviously a very well-run institution.
Absolutely. Over 20,000 students, 1,200 faculty, doing very well. And then we have another edupreneur, Nitesh Jain, who has started a platform called Singularity. And again, another woman entrepreneur, Shweta Raina, who has again started a upskilling program for graduates. Mayank Bhateja, who has started a very innovative student loans company called Credence, and Vidhu Subramaniam, who's offering music education programs to students. All very interesting and enterprising people.
Then, of course, our international news, which gives you news from other countries in the world, which is not at all visible in the Indian media. So this is very interesting news from United States, Brazil, Afghanistan, Australia, France, Bangladesh, South Korea.
And in our teacher to teacher column this month, we have Dr. Alan Anderson, who's the director of the Chaman Bharatiya School, Bangalore, writing. And he's talking about how educators and teachers and school managements have a responsibility to smooth the return of students back to on-campus in-person classes. So he suggests some very good ideas, including why educators need to, focus on the mental health and well-being of children before they begin with learning and academics.
They re-begin, they restart. And of course, in our second special report, we have posited that the year 2021-22 should be declared a zero academic year because 90%, 95% of children have been out of school in that year and haven't learnt anything. So perhaps they should repeat that year. It's a radical suggestion, but which nobody else has proposed. But I believe that it would be in the children's interest, in the national interest, that they repeat that year 21-22.
Yes, we've also made other suggestions, including how intensive learning recovery programs should be launched and why especially reopening of schools now should be a top priority of state governments across the country, and given a lot of data on why across the world now school closures are a strict no. In fact, schools should be the last to close and the first to reopen.
Indeed. Whereas the other way around here.
Yes. And then we have again book review section, a very interesting book review on the
Amartya
member
Sen's.
of Amartya Sen, Nobel laureate in economics, on his memoir and how his whole philosophy of economics evolved from his school days in Shanti Niketan, across then in Cambridge, etc. It's a very interesting book review. We recommend that you read it. And in our second book review, also again, Dilip, a very important and controversial subject, birth control politics.
Yes,
how it has shaped India.
Yes, no, indeed. Nowadays, nobody talks about birth control because now the demographic is shown to be a wealth. In the old days, it was India was doomed, according to all the pundits, because we had too many births. Now it seems the other way around.
So, very good assessment the author makes of India's population policy. Again, very highly recommended.
And in our postscript, we talk about how some important, not necessarily education subjects, but from the corporate world, and one on how Hindi imperialism is being revived and resisted in the South.
Yes. So all in all, information-packed issue with many topical issues in which we'd like you teachers, educators, parents to get involved, because like we often say in education world, education is too important to be left to politicians and bureaucrats.
Yes, the important thing is we don't get much feedback from teachers. They seem to be a very sort of inert and idle and not involved in the larger issues of education. I think this is very important for the education community and for parents and for industry indeed to get involved with education, because that is, they're shaping the workers and the employees of tomorrow.
Absolutely. As always, before we say goodbye, what's happening in ParentsWorld? ParentsWorld too, a very interesting cover story this time. We've highlighted the new trend, new phenomenon of the rising popularity of parenting coaches, especially during the pandemic. A lot of parents had to face challenges which they never faced before. Schools were closed. Parents became teachers. They became caregivers. So all this
while working from home themselves.
Yes. So this created a lot of stress and anxiety. And this new tribe of parenting coaches offer parents counseling, professional advice and guidance on how to navigate the challenges of a 21st century parenting. A very interesting ParentsWorld. So together, ParentsWorld and EducationWorld February issue, highly recommend you read both of them.
Yes,
Thank you.